So our talk is entitled Writing Outside Russia, an experiment in quantitative analysis, and that's us. And this is a collaboration which started maybe a couple of years ago, an attempt to create a system that would allow scholars, starting with ourselves and starting with my own project, which is on bilingual literature, will allow scholars to
literature scholars and humanities.
Yes,
literature.
To analyze literary texts in a quantitative way that hopefully would be helpful to them, even if they're not fans of the so-called distant reading. So we're thinking in terms of close reading, and we're thinking of distant reading or of quantitative methods as a way to aid close reading and textual analysis. So this would be our team, we call the project Bukvik. It's a Serbian word for a certain type of forest. And of course it's found on Russian Bukva. And again, that's us and some other people working with Lazar Kovacevic, Sinisa Rudin, and Dr. William Tegan in Wales. Alright. And this is one of our protagonists, hopefully recognizable, who seems very skeptical about this project, but I hope we'll persuade him in the end. Хорошо. Okay, so why is it possible to bring this down a bit, because otherwise we can't see titles? So why is computational analysis useful at all for the study of literary texts? And I think this slide is important. It's important to make this point exactly because it's not very common, at least today, to use quantitative methods for close textual analysis. And personally, when I started working on this, I was myself skeptical. And I understand that people may be skeptical about this. We have Pushkin with his algebraic harmony, and it's understandable that you may ask yourself, why try to measure harmony with algebra? Why dissect what is hopefully often beautiful into numbers, and what can it give us? Well, a few things. First of all, we think of distant reading, as I mentioned, as an aid to close reading. So we call it qualitative augmented quantitative analysis, which means that we go back and forth between close reading and quantitative methods, and so that our quantitative methods are informed by close reading and vice versa. So one is supposed to help the other.
It's kind of mixed methodology. You have a qualitative analysis, you have quantitative analysis, you have mixed hybrids, but this is what distinguishes this one from the regular mixed research methodology is basically that you don't have like a closed, like a extended loops. So at one moment you're like providing qualitative insights and then support them with the quantitative or opposite, and then like repeat the cycle. But basically this is in the real time happening. So in the real time you have insights coming out from quantitative, and then you're actually supporting them with the qualitative claims. So it's basically at the same time happening, which is distinguishing from regular mixed.
Yeah, and we'll try to illustrate a little bit how this works. Secondly, it allows for an exploration of methods for stylistic comparison, in particular across languages. When we want to compare texts across languages, comparative literature is a discipline that does that. It is very difficult to compare style. Indeed, if you want to compare modernist text, say, written by Virginia Woolf in English, and a modernist text written by Andrei Veli in Russian, obviously different languages have different styles. You know that they're both modernists. You know that they have something in common, but you don't really understand how to approach this. So one of our goals is to devise a method of doing that. So we try to come up with measures of style, of a so-called stylistic profile, the different things that people calculate in Vada text, and to compare text directly and across languages with reference to a corpus of literature in that language, a balanced corpus. Thirdly, it can help a reader if he or she can control what is being researched and how. So a strength of our approach is that we're working together, and Sasha here is a computer scientist. I'm a literary scholar, which means that actually are in a position where we can create our own tools. So we can think, okay, we want to be able to count this, and use, and we don't have to rely on pre-made tools. We can make our own. It enables and automatizes many processes that would be invisible to a reader, however skillful. This is very important to me, and this is something we explore in our word network, Society of Words project, sub-project, which we'll talk about in a second. In a literary text, we are dealing with series of words very often, with associations, with connections between words. And a skillful reader is often capable of finding those. In fact, what close reading is often about is finding those connections and understanding how they contribute to the text. But this is something that's very local. So a skillful reader sees, for example, to give an example, Vladimir Zandrov in his analysis on Anna Karenina notices that Vronsky's jaw trembles twice in the text. It trembles when his horse is dying, and it trembles again when he's consummating his affair with Anna. And he's making the point that, okay, this word is occurring only twice in the text. It must be meaningful. It brings those two events together and creates a possibility of an interpretation that his affair with Anna is a way of killing her, in a way, to put it bluntly. So a skillful reader can see that, but a machine can potentially help a reader identify those points. What are words that are used very commonly? What are words that are used often together? What are words that are used rarely in important locations in the book? So it can pinpoint locations to look at for the reader. Finally, it relies on state-of-the-art methodologies, which are, however, still imperfect. This is important to understand. So we are limited by what is available, what technology is capable of achieving today, which means that we're kind of guided by it and limited at the same time. There is no such thing as 100% accuracy. So that's something we take into account. As a rule, 90% accuracy plus is considered very good. And it requires, in our case, the development of a complex system from scratch, which is an unpredictable process, often takes longer than you expect. Often you have problems and try to solve them. So two fundamental concepts that we are basing this on are stylistic profile and the society of words. Stylistic profile it can be infinite, but for us, this is a kind of a matrix of things we can, with the technology we have, calculate in a text. So for example, we do things like part of speech tagging. That's something tools exist for that. Analysis of vocabulary, of lemmas. We're limited by the tools that are available, but together they create a certain, you can say, a matrix, which will be expanding as technology expands. So these are the things we can count about the text. Other things we cannot. Is this an analysis style as such? Well, yes and no. But it is together, it entails a kind of analysis of style. So, of course, the word style we're using here is not used in the way that we usually use this word. So, the style here is the collection of features that characterize this particular author's way of writing. And the choice of these features are limited by what we can calculate and judgment. Finally, secondly, society of words is a concept we came up with. Inspired, you could say it's kind of inspired by structuralism, by the idea of a system, by the idea that words have connections, not often visible to the naked eye, and pinning these connections down can create a different kind of reading, can help us understand something about the text, which is there, but which otherwise we wouldn't be able to locate.
And just if I can add, just compared to like regular statistic profiles, which is a part of speech tagging or a lemma or a distributions, frequency distributions, you basically have distributions or you have kind of counting. In this case, we have we believe in connections between words. So we are developing a real society. So it's not really just like a frequency distributions. Now we suddenly building a relation between topics, between words, and then later will come much more to describe what we can do. But basically, it is like a first step to describe a book, not just in a statistical approach, but basically try to see a structure deeper, like that machine can understand the deeper structure of a novel, which is definitely existing. Yeah.
So we'll come back to this a little bit later. Cross-lingual comparison is another crucial concept, and this system was created partly in order to enable comparison of texts across languages. So we can compare Russian texts with each other, for example, English with each other, given the corpus and given the digitized text. But also, we're thinking of comparing texts across languages. This is inspired by my particular project, which is on bilingual writers. So say, Vladimir Nabokov writes in English and in Russian. Is it the same writer in both languages? Is he writing in a similar way? How do we understand this? Well, we can compare his text directly. So for example, if we're doing part of speech tagging, we can see what proportion of his words are, say, nouns in English or in Russian. And we can compare that. However, of course, maybe English in general uses more or fewer nouns than Russian in general. So some things can be compared directly, say sentence length. If somebody uses long sentences, you know it impacts the style even if this is more common for this particular language. However, it's more fruitful often to compare indirectly. So we have a balanced corpus, ground corpus in English. We have a national corpus for Russian from the analytical fiction part. Same for ground corpus. So a balanced corpus for Russian fiction and for a balanced corpus for English fiction. Same for French, we're still looking for a corpus there. But you compare the text to the corpus, you see how it deviates from the corpus. You see, is Nabokov writing in a way that's similar to how others write in Russian versus English? And you make conclusions from there. And finally, this is a system that helps us compare different translations and different combinations of texts within one language. So Russian with Russian, English with English, or different translations of the writer into a language. So for translations, for example, some questions we can ask is, does Nabokov write differently in English versus in Russian? Is his Russian versus or English style consistent throughout his novels? So we can look at different books and see if the variables change. Is there such a thing as a translated text? So we take different texts Nabokov translated versus texts that he wrote directly in the language, and we compare those. So basically the system is largely the same, but the combination of data is different. And as a result, we have different result. Huh? Okay. So how to analyze translative style? For example, again, with Nabokov, his novels are translated into Russian by different translators. We can look at how Nabokov's Russian style may vary between different translations, different translators, as opposed to his own style when he writes in Russian. Can give us potential insight into aspects of translation theory, such as foreignization, domestication, explicitization. And finally, are these results generalizable? So we're not just studying Nabokov, we're studying a range of writers, bilingual and otherwise. But for example, in this project, where the end result, this is a work in progress, I should have said it in the beginning, but the end result will be a comparison of Nabokov with three other bilingual writers, Samuel Beckett, Joseph Brodsky, and Roman Omangai, who write in three languages, Russian, French, or English. So we'll be looking at the phenomenon of literary bilingualism in general across these languages. Yes?